Hello my fellow Archons, and welcome to another video. I'm super glad to have had the opportunity to travel out to Roseville, Minnesota to compete in KeyForge Celebration 2023, the second event of its kind and the place where the first ever KeyForge World Championships were held. I thought the first KeyForge Celebration last year was incredible, but this one was on a whole other level. From grim reminders to Menagerie decks to the highest degree of gameplay out there, in today's video I want to recap my experience at this event for you guys. It was amazing. Let's get into it. Day 1 started out with a Winds of Exchange sealed event, but this was no casual sealed event. These were last chance qualifiers for the World Championship. Any vacant spots in the World Championship left by players who weren't able to attend or accept their invite from previous Nationals or Vault Tours of the 2023 season were filled by the top players in the last chance qualifiers, so the stakes were high. The pressure was definitely on as we constructed our decks with that in mind. I was pretty happy with the end result of my Alliance deck. One of my 3 decks had the Scholar token, so I went with that one along with the Saurian pod containing Legionary Trainer, Longsword Lector, and 3 Arm the Plebeians. It also had Faust and Crushing Charge. Then I had an Equidon pod with a decent amount of Ember control, including Double Closer Negotiation, Shrewd Investor, and Out-Negotiate. And lastly, I added in an Unfathomable pod with my first ever Max Enhanced card, an Azure Basin Outpost with a grand total of 3 Ember Pips, a Capture, and a Draw. I had to include that pod just because of that. The pod did also include 2 Covetous, Catch and Release, Adult Swim, Fathom Reaver, and Bubbles, all of which were good tools, so the pod was at least decent apart from the outpost. With those 3 pods combined as an alliance, I felt alright. It had good Ember control, decent board control, and just some overall really even and well-balanced stats. I was hoping to get some good Scholar value with the Legionary Trainer and Saurian, and perhaps some decent burst with the Steel and Equidon and the additional Pips and Unfathomable. However, as I began to play with my deck, I began realizing there were just too many dead cards in the pods. There were too many times I found my hand clogged with the Cool Alone Heroes and Dethruster Recruiters that just weren't doing anything helpful. There was also practically zero efficiency in my deck, meaning I had very little means of cycling or getting the cards I wanted or needed faster. Game 1 I ended up losing. It was an extremely tight match. We both went back and forth checking for our 3rd key multiple times, but my opponent won out in the end. My Scholars just weren't doing anything, and my opponent had double Equidgy Outpost, so at a critical moment when he needed to take me off my 3rd key, he was able to call Equidon, dig 6 cards deeper into his deck, and find his second closed door negotiation. There was nothing I could do after that, and so I ended up 0-1 going into the second round. Game 2, in the loser's bracket, I blew my opponent out of the water. My deck was just super fast compared to his, and he was unable to keep up. I was 1-1. Game 3, I was really hoping to win, so even if I did go out in round 4, I could at least say I had an even record. Unfortunately, this didn't happen, and I ended up losing. My opponent took one of his pods from a deck that had a Cursed Relic in it, so it was just loaded with Ember Pips. For example, he had a triple Ember Enhanced Uplink, which was half a key out of nowhere. Not only that, but in a critical moment when I had a hand full of 6 Equidon cards, one of which was Closed Door Negotiation, he played Abyssal Sight and removed the CDN from my hand, which I would have easily been able to stop his first key with. The game went downhill from there, even with my Legionary Trainer putting in solid work with the Scholars. My run in the last chance qualifiers ended with a 1-2 record. I was disappointed to be sure, but at least it freed me up for the rest of the day to enjoy socializing with the community and playing some Menagerie games. And let me just say, Menagerie decks are awesome, way better than Unchained in my opinion. The Menagerie set has its own dedicated card pool, consisting mainly of cards from past sets, but it also has House Geistoid, the new house in the upcoming set Grim Reminders. They also have the all-new House Kirakin, which was insane to see. Kirakin pods often consist of the legendary Kirakin and a whole bunch of different tentacle creatures, so it's all based very heavily, of course, off the Rise of the Kirakin KeyForge adventure. It was amazing to see an entire house based around that concept, and though it could be rather hit or miss, everyone was hyped to see Menagerie decks feature a never-before-seen house. Another defining feature of Menagerie decks are their built-in packets, small sets of cards featuring well-known combos or types of cards. For example, someone opened a packet called Disc Damage that contained 5 Maleficorns, meaning there were 20 damage pips floating around in that deck. Boulevard Blake opened a Curses packet in the Geistoid house, where 4 of the new Cursed artifacts mavericked into. There's also a Leaders packet, a Dark Ember Vault packet, a Genka packet, and various weapons packets, just to name a few. It's a super cool concept that was a lot of fun to explore, way more interesting than Unchained, that is, until you opened up the stupid Hacidus Raptor packet, which I got unlucky enough to crack. Why they included such a thing is beyond me. I got to play a whole bunch of Menagerie games with lots of different people. For every 2 wins, you'd get a ticket that could be used to buy prizes from the small prize wall that was set up, and for every 2 losses, you would receive a voucher that would allow you to buy a new Menagerie deck. I opened one of these decks on camera, so if you haven't seen that video yet, go and check it out. Besides Menagerie, over the course of the day I got to meet a bunch of new people, open a few Vaultmaster decks, and just hang out. It was a great time, and was an excellent appetizer for what was to come in Day 2. Day 2 is when things got real juicy, and the World Championships truly began, along with the Archon and Alliance Opens. I competed in the Archon Open tournament, and this time I brought with me another Winds of Exchange deck, Bomb the Astonished. It's 84 SAS with houses Equidon, Marth, and Unfathomable, and the Prospector token. One of my favorite parts about this deck is the Clone Home enhanced with 2 Ember Pips. If I can start snowballing with a board bigger than the opponent's and play that double pip Clone Home over and over, things can get silly, especially with that puzzling trinket over an Equidon. The deck also has 3 Maelstroms for decent board control, double trade secrets, double generous offer, along with double auction off for that all-important artifact control. It played very well in practice, typically generating at least a few prospectors along the way, and just racing ahead as much as possible. My first game was one of the tightest I have ever played. Me and my opponent were neck and neck the entire time, right up to our final keys. We went back and forth multiple times for a third key, and it all came down to the point where she had 8 Ember in her pool, checking for last key. I had no Ember control in hand except for 2 Ember Pips and Unfathomable, which could be used as capture pips because of my puzzling trinket. However, that would only take her down to 6, not enough to prevent her from winning the game. But I decided to play it out. I played those cards, resolving the Ember as a capture and bringing her down to 6. All that was left in hand was a Kelpminder with a draw pip. Mustering as much faith in the heart of the cards as possible, I played the Kelpminder and drew into my second Azure Basin Outpost, my only Ember Pip in Unfathomable left in the deck, out of at least 15 or 20 cards left to draw from. I played the Outpost, bringing her down to 5 and winning the game, since she wasn't able to stop me after that. It was the most miraculous clutch victory of all time, and I got the win round 1. However, I must have used up literally all of my draw luck in that one turn because the rest of the tournament I drew horribly. I mean, I quite literally have never seen my deck draw so badly in all my time playing and testing it than it did in the next 2 games. My second game, by turn 2, I had all 3 Maelstroms in hand at the most inopportune time possible when my opponent had very little board. I couldn't afford to chain myself by holding onto them, so I was forced to ditch them, and so for the rest of the game I had practically no board control, and that ruined me. It also didn't help that both my Befuddle and Ironix Rebel got tokenized. Over the course of the rest of the game, my opponent created this truly diabolical board and blew me out of the water. Then, round 3, instead of all my board control reaching my hand turn 3, it was all my Ember control. I had an empty board with both trade secrets and both generous offers in hand, and my opponent had very little Ember. I used trade secrets to clear out my hand and steal as much Ember as possible, but it all came way too early to very little effect, and I was once again screwed for the rest of the game. Like I said before, I have never seen my deck draw so badly in my life, and I've done a lot of testing and playing with it, so of course it had to happen when I'm actually in the heat of competition. I think I could have done a lot better had my cards been spaced out a little nicer. I ended up getting knocked out of the competition with a 1-2 record, just like the day before. It was extremely disappointing to see my deck fail me so badly. It was worst case scenario 2 games in a row. I knew my deck could perform far better, I'd seen it do so in previous games, but today was just not my day. It once again, however, freed me up to play with my Menagerie decks and interact with more of the community in some casual matches. Throughout the rest of the day, the Archon and Alliance Open tournaments continued, as did the World Championships. The top cuts of each were eventually determined, with my dad actually making top 8 in Open Archon, and the event we were all looking forward to with huge anticipation was rapidly approaching, the Nightfall sealed event. First though was the Keynote Presentation, an awesome talk presented by Christian T. Peterson, head of Ghost Galaxy, where he talked about the past, present, and future of KeyForge, including topics such as organized play moving forward, the process of deck creation, and much more. There's a link to that in the description below. After the keynote, the Nightfall sealed event began. This is the event I was most looking forward to. We all speculated that we would be playing with the first ever Grim Reminders decks, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. We were all given 3 sealed Grim Reminders decks to craft an alliance with, and it was a truly magical experience. It was also quite stressful, reading through the effects of tons of brand new cards, trying to identify synergies and stats, then constructing an alliance out of 9 pods from a set we've never seen before. I'll go into much more detail about my Grim Reminders alliance in a future video, but in short, it had houses Untamed, Brobnar, and Mars, and it was a speedy one. We played 3 rounds total, and I managed to go 3-0, undefeated, earning me 3 more unopened Vaultmaster decks as a prize. The Untamed had 2 copies of this awesome card called Circle of Life, which I used to great effect, and the set also has its own version of Hunting Witch called Haunting Witch, which has the same effect but only if you're haunted. There was also some strong board control in the form of Ember Storm. Overall, the pod was quick with lots of pips and burst potential. The Brobnar had some really beefy creatures such as Awakened Titan and Rorag Screamer, along with Brick Nasty, Shock Herder, and this really powerful card called Cacophonous Riot, allowing me to ready and fight with those creatures immediately. It even had Berserker Slam, Iron Obelisk, and an awesome action called Recklessness. I can already tell that Brobnar will once again be an absolutely powerful staple of this upcoming set. And lastly, the Mars had triple Brain Dart, Memrocks with Scoop Up and Mars First, Grabber Jammer, and a really neat new creature called Target Unixidal, allowing me to archive some of those great tools from my discard pile. Once again, I'll go into these pods and the decks they came from in much more detail in a future video. The Nightfall sealed event was everything I had dreamed. Almost the entire set got spoiled. It was awesome reviewing other people's cards and pods, especially the brand new Geistoid houses that people opened. There are so many videos I'll be making in the near future about this card pool. So many of the new cards made people's jaw drop when they read their effects for the first time. This set is going to be bonkers. But having gone 3-0 in this event ended day 2 on a very happy note, and I headed back to my hotel room with day 3 right on the horizon. Day 3 was when the top cut took place for the Alliance and Archon Opens and the World Championships. I was there mostly to cheer on my dad, who had made top 8 in the Archon Open, and enjoy a few more casual games before it was time to leave. My dad did end up getting eliminated out of the first round of top cut, but it was still extremely cool to see him make it so far in the tournament. And that about wrapped it up on my side of things. Of course, huge congratulations to the first ever KeyForge World Champions, Dorian11 and Donut's dad in Archon and Alliance respectively, and the winners of the Open tournaments, Ben the Monkey in Archon and Asass22 in Alliance, each earning invites to the 2024 World Championships next year. And then, I didn't stick around for this part, but afterwards there was a Q&A session with the Ghost Galaxy staff called Meet the Ghosts, where players were able to ask them the questions that were on their mind and get some answers firsthand. And with that, me and my travel group headed out, having enjoyed a truly wonderful weekend of KeyForge Celebration. And there we have it. The first ever official KeyForge World Championships have been completed, wrapping up the 2023 KeyForge season. I'm very much looking forward to what KeyForge has in store for us next year, from new sets to future vault tours and organized play on the local level. It was amazing getting to meet so many of you guys in person, a lot of you for the first time, putting faces to names and enjoying some games of KeyForge together. And of course, seeing so many different content creators for the game together in one place was awesome. Huge shoutouts to Murph or Fudginator, Linusu, Tabletop Royale, Boulevard Blake and SC Steele of the HFFS podcast, the members of Archon's Corner, Orion or Fluxamal, and anyone else I may have missed. It was truly a memorable weekend, a step above the celebration last year, and I had a blast. Again, there's tons more KeyForge content heading your way, mostly about Grim Reminder since so much of the set has been revealed, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on a single video going forward. And maybe consider becoming a channel member if you really appreciate this sort of content. You'll gain access to all sorts of exclusive content and emotes. Thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you all again in the next one. See you later.